so love this music. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Ace on Music. I'm joined once again by my trusty producer Mark and my long-suffering assistant Sean.
Hello.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you all for the feedback you've been giving us on the show. We got a lot, especially on the one about the covers of the artists who do the covers and all that sort of thing. And I did want to make one small correction. My friend Johannes pointed out that I made a mistake when I said that the Hildebrandt brothers did the Bat Out of Hell album, when in fact it was the master Richard Corbin, the man who created Den in the heavy metal magazines, who had done that cover. But that led to a discussion with Johannes, and he sent me an amazing book that he and another dear friend of mine, Martin Popoff, had done together. And it's called Fade to Black. Okay, now the cool thing, if you are into album covers, this is the book for you. I mean, they have taken many of the favorite covers of all time, and they have interviewed the artists who actually made the covers and told the stories behind making the actual albums, the cover art for all these things. An incredible book. I got it in the mail yesterday. It's been in my hands almost constantly since. Really cool book. Highly recommended. These two guys, I mean, you got a guy who's done many, many famous covers. Johannes has done covers for people from Blue Oyster Cult to Fate's Warning to Voivod to his resume is quite formidable. And Martin is one of the most prolific rock writers in the world today. Great book. Check it out.
The best album covers, right?
Yeah, and it's quite comprehensive. So.
Right.
Now, today we're going to do something very special and a little bit new. We've invited on a good friend of mine to be our first ever guest on the show. Now, his name is Donny Wightman. Donny has been a part of the Aerosmith Camp since the late 90s. He acted as their road manager. He also works with Ringo Starr and the AllStarrs. He's done road manager and tour manager for them. I first encountered Donny a few years ago when one of the bands that I managed, Thin Lizzy, decided to do some 40th anniversary shows to celebrate the Jailbreak album. And we wanted to get some luminaries to join our ranks, as it were. And the bass position was taken by none other than Tom Hamilton from Aerosmith. But the deal with Tom is that Donny kind of comes as a package deal with him. And Donny, being one of the most talented tour managers in the business, we asked him to tour manage Thin Lizzy as well. Great guy, one of the best people in this industry I've ever met. Welcome to the show, Donny.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Fantastic. Now, over the years, you have got to have had some crazy stuff happen to you on the road. I mean, Aerosmith are probably one of the most infamous bands in the world for their antics. Anything you like? How did you get involved with these guys to begin with?
Well, with those guys, it was pretty much accidental. It was timing. I got to know one of the guys early on. They had all moved to the South Shore of Massachusetts, just south of Boston, and that's where I lived. And they all basically lived within a 2 square mile radius of each other. And through the one guy, I got invited into the circle, and I started part-time and home gigs, helping out. But I watched, I listened, I learned, and after a while, I was invited into the road management team, and it worked out for everybody, for them, for me. And again, you watch, you listen, you learn, and Ace as well as anyone. It's contacts. It's a very small subculture of
That's
people
true.
do what we do.
That's for
And
sure.
road management, tour management, same thing. And when you put a team together, it's, hey, who can I get? First guy you get is, the tour manager will get as a production manager. He'll get his lead carpenter, his lead electrician, and and so forth. And it's, everybody knows, everybody's worked with everybody. You'll go to a festival in Europe and there'll be 12 bands and you'll know people on every crew. You've worked with them across paths. It's an amazing way how it happens. And here I am 25, 28 years later and still loving it, doing it, and bumping into people I worked with 25 years ago who are in different camps. And as you know, it's
I do.
Nothing better than a festival, to bump into people and tell old stories and reconnect.
I hear that. I think the first time that you hit my radar, Donny, was when I bought the Walk This Way book that the guys wrote, and I think you're mentioned a few times in there, and so, but in my experience in the business, there are basically two kinds of road managers or tour managers. They're the ones who rule through fear and intimidation and just lose their nut whenever something goes wrong. And then there are the calm, cool, collected guys who never seem to lose their cool, who everything's always under control. And you definitely fall into that latter category. And considering the situations that you're thrust into, how do you maintain your cool like that?
I learned from a guy named Jimmy Ayers, and Jimmy started off back with Whitesnake back in the day. Jimmy's from East London, and just a charming guy. And he came into the Aerosmith camp just before me, and he kind of brought me along and mentored me, and put a lot of trust in me. But I always watched Jimmy and the way he operated, and he was just like you said. He was cool, calm, collected. Never got frazzled. Although one time at the second Woodstock, there is a good story about him punching out the promoter, but there was only one time that he lost it, and it was for good reason. But yeah, I followed Jimmy's lead. His whole philosophy is there's no problems, there's only solutions. And he just retired. He was with Def Leppard for the last 5 or 6 years, and just this past year he retired. Living in LA, loving it out there. But yeah, that's where I kind of got, he has that level. I remember, many times in the band playing after a gig at 3 or 4 in the morning, getting ready to pull into an airport, and we check to make sure our cars were on the ground wherever we were going. And if there were no cars on the ground or they were delayed, he'd just go up to the pilot and, hey, make a couple lazy S's. And, we'd rather, let the guy sleep in the back and not know anything's going on than sit in the ground waiting for a car at 3 in the morning that, went to the wrong airport or the wrong FBO. And, it's just little things like that you pick up on. And, you touring's hard enough for the guys, especially when they get up in years. And you just want it to be smooth. And if they don't see the bumps, then there were no bumps.
Well, that's the way it's got to be. I mean, just having seen, tour managers like you, I have another fellow who I've known for many years, Eddie Roca, who's dealt with Motorhead. That's a very chaotic camp in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that he manages to, I don't think in the 20-plus years I've known Eddie, I've ever seen him lose his cool, no matter what's going on, and that's a miracle. But with Aerosmith, I mean, you're talking about one of the biggest bands in the world. I mean, you're touring anything from from this incredible Vegas residency you did recently, all the way up to arena stadiums, all kinds of crazy stuff. What you got to have some interesting tales from life on the road with Aerosmith, right?
Oh, those guys are, it's funny. You've been talking on the last couple of shows about, music and vinyl making a comeback and everything's digital. And on your first show, I think it was about touring, how artists, make all their money touring now. Mm-hmm. And even a legendary act like those guys that have a catalog like they do, it's touring is the way to make money. And so it's more of a business nowadays than, prior to my coming along. I can't speak for that, but, these guys are in the gym, they're in bed early, they rock rock hard for 2.5 hours, and then it's get back to the big boy news at 11, and in the gym at 8 or 9 in the morning. I mean, it's a business. It really is, and I would not want to tour a road manager baby band these days. I mean, I love Greta Van Fleet, and I love some of these other Kings of Leon, but I don't want no part of doing that with a young band. It's just I'm too old.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this Vegas residency you guys just did. I know that you invited Sean and I along a little while ago, and
sure,
we got to experience this show. And let me tell you, if you haven't experienced this, easily one of the best concert experiences that I think either of us had been through in a long time. And a lot of that came down to two big factors. One, the visual appeal. I mean, by having a stationary platform for your show, there was some incredible stage antics and stage props that were being used, things I had never seen before. But the biggest point that I thought was amazing was the sound quality of that venue. Oh my gosh, I've seen thousands of shows at this point. Sean, I'm sure you've seen as many. And we both agreed, we both couldn't get over how amazing the sound was,
well,
right?
My first experience was going back, like when I'm born in the 70s, 71. So, one of my favorite bands, Floyd, we talked about this before, and they had the quadraphonic sound and everything going on. But I went and seen Roger Waters in the 80s, and he had that sound going on. And, wow, to just experience that now with the residency of Aerosmith, and that sound quality was amazing. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. I pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it went into planning that incredible event.
Well, the video, a lot of the video was done by the same team that did Game of Thrones, the Dragons. That's what they call them, the Dragon Team.
Okay,
and
cool.
A lot of that stuff, the visuals, you see that on band historical content that were created for this was that team. And SFX, I believe that's the name of the sound company, they put in 90 points of sound into that venue.
Wow.
So no matter where you're sitting, and we share it. Lady Gaga comes in, she'll do a month, we'll do a month, Bruno Mars will do a month, and I think share. So the MGM spent a ton of money when they did that whole facility over, which I saw just reopen just this week, the casino itself. So hopefully we're on the right track to getting some live music in there in 21.
Oh,
but yeah, it's amazing. And if you take the bar seats, I know you guys had mentioned that the two live bars that are up there with bartenders.
Yeah.
And they're actually behind the wall of sound, but those people are given earbuds and an iPod, and they get the actual band mix.
Wow.
So they're hearing what Steven's hearing, what the band guys are getting. And plus you're an arm's length away from, Joe Perry or Tom Hamilton or Brad or, Steven, of course, or Joey up at the kit. And it's a great experience. It's I've had them on just for, just to see what, the hoopla was all about. It's amazing. It really is.
Wow. Well, I mean, it was definitely a spectacular show. Do they change the set list up very often in that one?
Yeah, they we went out to Prim, which is a small town outside of Vegas that had an arena available, and I think it was a small 4,000 or 5,000 seat venue, and they loaded the whole show in because they needed a whole arena to set it up for rehearsal, and I think they worked up probably about 28 or 30 songs, and they'll do 19 between 18 and 20 a night. So, they'll throw in the Kings and Queens, stuff that you're just like, whoa, I haven't heard that in 15 years. But it was, a lot of work. And and there's some you have to keep in because of the digital video content. And, it's not quite a timestamp show, but, you were there, there's a lot of visuals that cue for certain songs, and it's a big part of the show. So probably 60% of the show is, Dream On, Walk This Way, the staples, and then they'll throw some gems in. No More, No More. I can't think. I mean, I've seen the show 5,000 times, but they do change it up. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, they will. They will change it up.
Now, one of the things that I was wondering as I sat there waiting for the performance to begin was, considering how much time you've spent on the road, this is a very different experience where basically you're parked in one spot for an extended period of time. And, what real differences, like, did the guys stay in Vegas the whole time? Were they jumping back to LA or Boston or wherever? And which
No, I mean...
And which do you
Go
prefer?
ahead.
And which do you prefer? Do you prefer the different place every night, or do you prefer sticking in one spot?
Well, I might sound spoiled, but I've been around the world so many times and been to so many great places that it's nothing. There's nothing better than taking an elevator to work. I love getting in the elevator. We literally, everybody, you get to pick an MGM property where you want to stay, but, the band guys, and then, the management team, you kind of spread out, make sure all the hotels are covered where the guys are. And, they all have a little studio. They all have their gym equipment. We have treadmills brought up, stationary bikes, dumbbells, kitchens, all the places have kitchens. And so it's, you unpack once and it's great. You get off stage, you can be back in your room in 8-9 minutes. And again, watching the big boy news at 11. I mean, how great is that?
Well, how many days a week are you actually performing?
It averages out to like 3.5. It's usually 1 on, 2 off, 1 on, 1 off, and it rotates. Vegas likes you in there for the prime nights, but sometimes it works out. You're on a Sunday or a Tuesday, and they get great business. They were pretty much sold, the whole way through.
Yeah, I mean, so do the guys stay in Vegas for the duration, or is it in and out throughout the?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the occasional meeting, or I know before the last leg, before the shutdown, we did the Grammys.
Oh, right.
And then right back into Vegas, and to finish that 3-week run, and then it was March 2nd, and everything stopped. So for the most part, everybody stays. Everybody gets a car, and you stay busy. And it's not like going to Europe, as you know. You're in a different country every other day, different currency, different languages, different
power
problems,
adapters,
different power adapters. And you get to Italy, everything, no problem. And 2 hours later, you're sitting there, but you go to Japan, and they're like, it's the greatest place to tour, Japan. I mean, they give you tour with Udo Aris, Mr. Udo's Cruise, and you don't want for anything, and it's on time, and there isn't another bolt out of place, and it's just a great place to tour. It's far away, but it's one of my favorites.
I'm right there with you. Japan is definitely one of my favorite countries to visit and to tour in. I mean, I think the first time I went, it was with Bon Jovi back early 2000s, and it was amazing. You'd see the stage guys set this up, or they would set up the stage, and then as soon as they were satisfied that everything was where it needed to be, this team of people came in. They marked everything on the floor. They took photographs of everything, and then so that they could then move things and stuff and put it back exactly where it was supposed to be. But the wildest thing was the end of the show. I had never seen anything like this. Now, Bon Jovi was playing a very big venue, 40, 50,000 Japanese fans. Show ends, house lights go down for a moment, then the house lights come up, and there's 60,000 people sitting there waiting, and then an announcer would come on and say, okay, section so-and-so, you can leave. And they would all orderly get up, walk out, go to the merch stand. Okay, section, you can leave, and it just kept doing that. Unbelievable.
It sounds like a bad acid trip.
And you know why? You know why they do that, and they go along with it is because of the train schedule.
Yeah.
Everybody that comes, and the shows, start at like 6 p.m. there. People go right from work right to the venue, and by 8:30, 9 o'clock, they're on their way home. But the trains are precise. The bullet trains. You probably traveled,
many times
over there like we did. I mean, that's part of the fun over there. You have a whole entourage going through these stations, and if you're not on that train within a minute and a half, the train leaves. It's just gone. So everybody's in, and I remember one of the first times I went over there, we pretty much had the whole car of the bullet train going to Osaka from Tokyo, and we were laughing and just having fun, just telling jokes like you do on the road. And all of a sudden, this guy in a business suit who was in the very front jumps up and starts screaming in Japanese, waving his arms, and like his tie was loose, and he was like. So then he sits down, and I said, "What was that all about?" And the interpreter said, points to the sign. She says, "This is the quiet car." And it was just the typical Americans, Sorry.
Oh my.
And it was tiptoe the whole rest of the trip, but yeah.
So
it was us.
Without betraying any confidences or anything, what's the craziest Aerosmith tour story that you can tell me?
Oh God! I mean, really. I mean, it's as you can tell, I'm like. I'm not going to say anything, so I'm just like kind of beating around the bush. And,
that's okay.
People, my friend Jimmy, Jimmy Ayers, who we talked about earlier, he said, "You want to stay in this business?" He says, "What goes in the road stays in the road."
Exactly.
And I'm a firm believer of that. And I've seen people, write a book, and you never see them again. It's just. When you're with these people out here, you get to be part of the family, and you get to watch your kids grow up, and you see them have grandkids, and they put a trust in you. You hear things, you see things, you're part of things, and you don't want to betray that if you're loyal. And I consider myself very, very loyal.
You so nailed it. It is. There's an intense responsibility that comes along with the kind of jobs that you and I do, and like you said, we are invited into their lives in a very intimate way, and they trust us, and it is just an important thing to never ever violate that trust. So, well, that's the end of our first half of our interview with Donny. Next week we'll air the second half, and we'll talk a little bit about his time with Aerosmith. Thank you to all of you for your continued support of our show. You can always send us your feedback to acetalksmusic@gmail.com. I want to thank Mark and Sean for joining me here today, and especially to Donny for being our special guest and telling such great stories. And remember to check out our account at patreon.com for the Ace on Music After Hours show, bonus content only for Patreon supporters. Until next week, keep listening to your music.